for everyone. Alrighty. Welcome to our first session of the day in the adoption track. This is the Microsoft Viva as a change management toolbox with Patrick Tucker. My name is Pete Simpkins, and I'm one of the board members for the Minnesota Microsoft 365 user group. I'm the man behind the curtain that's posting all of your social media posts. Couple housekeeping items as we move forward. This meeting is being recorded. We're asking everyone to please mute yourself before the presentation gets started. I'll be monitoring and helping manage all of that. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to raise your hand, add it into the chat. I'll be jumping in and I'll help Patrick kind of watch that chat too, just in case there's anything that pops up. If you need live captions, we have them turned on, so you can actually turn that on for your own view too. At the end of the session, we'll be giving away a $25 gift card. So as you go through, if you're interacting and promoting, we'll do a little more, we'll do a little kind of drawing at the end to identify who's been participating the most. And then lastly, at the end of the session, or end of the day, we're going to do a grand prize giveaway. And I'll highlight that here at the end too. I do want to help thank our sponsors that have helped make this whole event available. Without that, we couldn't do these sessions or give away the gift cards and the grand prize giveaway too. So what you'll do at the end of this session, at the end of today, is you'll actually fill out this survey. I am presenting in PowerPoint Live, so you can go ahead and you can click on that link right from this slide to open it and have it in your browser and then fill it out as you go through. We'll do one drawing and you'll end up getting a Surface Laptop Go. So pretty good grand prize for attending a free workshop day. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Patrick, and I'll go off mute.
All right, thanks, Pete. So let me share out my screen and we'll get rolling. Good morning, everybody. So let me just encourage you before we do anything else that if you have questions along the way, if you have comments along the way, I am more than happy to hear those as we go. So feel free to open your mic, ask your questions. You can also use the raise hand feature in Teams or type those questions in the chat. More than happy to have that conversation with you this morning. So let me introduce myself to you briefly, and then we'll get rolling. So my name is Patrick Tucker. I'm a Senior Cloud Solution Architect with Microsoft in the Culture and Cloud Experience team. That is the people and process team focusing on adoption and change management, as well as modern service management. And my perspective, not only coming from that practice, but also for about 25 years in Microsoft Partners Consulting and training, so the technical aspect there as well. And thanks, Pete, I appreciate that. Mesh me is so much better than actual me, so I try to use that whenever possible. My contact info is here on the screen. I'd love to hear from you after the session. I'll bring that back up at the end, so if you do want to reach out, we'll have that opportunity again. So just to set the stage for what we want to try to accomplish here this morning. Really three primary goals. The first is to really define some foundations for the practice of change management. So just out of curiosity, if you wouldn't mind to raise your hand, are you in a role as a change manager or in any way supporting change management in your organizations? Awesome, good to see. Thanks for all the hands. I really appreciate that. So we'll make sure we define some foundational things together first, but then we really want to look at the Viva suite and what's available across that set of products and understand what each one is for so that we can envision how those Viva modules are going to help us to deliver effective change management. So if you're here from the perspective of OCM or ACM, this is the right session for you. If you're here just to learn more about Viva, I think this is the right session for you too. So before we get properly started into our content, I thought we could play a little bit of a game together, a game that I like to call Name That Bust. So I'm going to show you a picture of a famous historical figure, a picture of their bust, and then all you have to do is tell me who they are. So name them correctly, and we'll take a look at a facial reconstruction photo of what they may have looked like. So feel free to open your mic, type in the chat. I'd love to see your answers here. So if you're ready to name that bust, here's our first one. So who is this?
Ben Franklin.
Ben Franklin, absolutely. Got to start with an easy one, right? So, I think the bust just about captures the picture here. So we know what Ben Franklin looked like. All right, so let's take a look at the next one. Who is this?
Nefertiti.
Absolutely, you are on it this morning. This is Nefertiti. And again, just really sensational colors on the bust there. So we get a great idea of what she looked like. A little bit harder now, so let's take a look at the next one. Who is this?
Socrates.
Close.
Galileo.
A little bit further away. This is
Caesar.
Aristotle. So we were in the right Greek philosopher realm. So Aristotle. Aristotle looks like he would be a little intense. Maybe giving us philosophy in a corner with his finger in our face. So here's the last one. Who is this?
Patrick Tucker. Kind of looks like you a little bit.
Correct. This is both Socrates and me. I am the bust of Socrates, apparently. So excellent job. All right. That means if I'm Socrates, I have to go through the rest of the session only asking questions. So we'll see if that works or not. So thank you for playing Name That Bust. I appreciate your interaction. Let's go ahead and actually get rolling here with our content. So we've got a couple of goals, right? We want to understand just a little bit foundationally about the role of change management as a discipline, and then really look at how Viva is going to help us to implement some of those concepts and those best practices. So just to kind of define the role a little bit, and thank you again for raising your hand to let me know that a great many of you are already in this role. So we know that the focus here is really on the people side of change. So I like to say all technical change is human change, because it's really the people that are using those technologies that are really going to make all the difference. So the best technical solution is only going to be as good as how easy it is to use and the value that it brings to the people that are using it. So change managers work along with project managers, development teams, technical resources to take us from whatever our current state is to a future state where we get more value from those tools, those products and services. So driving faster adoption, increasing utilization, more efficiency, more productivity with the solutions that we have, following some type of methodology. So at Microsoft, ProSci is our methodology of choice. There are, of course, others, but I think ProSci has certainly grown in popularity over the last few years. And in that ProSci methodology, the piece that kind of lives at the center of making change effective for the people that are experiencing it is the ADCAR model. So this is kind of how the individual processes change. Now we could apply this same. So we're maybe rolling out M365. We're shifting to a new cloud-based tool from an on-premises tool. We are changing payroll systems, whatever the case may be, or it even could be personal change. The model still works to understand kind of the process that we go through to get the most benefit from changes that are occurring. And it's very much a linear process. So if we don't get the first element right, we really can't effectively move on to the second and third and so forth. So this ADCAR model starts with awareness, which if we don't know either what the change is or why we're making the change to begin with, what the purpose behind it is, it's going to be really difficult to move forward effectively with that change. So the desire step is that we have decided to participate and support the change. We start talking a lot more about the what's in it for me. So the adoption of that change, meaning the purposeful usage of a tool or seeing the benefit in it and participating in it fully, is really going to be based on those first two elements. So we need to know what's happening and why. And then we need to know basically how to do the new processes or use the new tools that are coming. So the knowledge aspect here in the middle is really a core piece, but it's one I think that often we start with directly. We go straight to knowledge. So something new is coming. We're going to roll out a new SharePoint online intranet, for example. So we start sending training resources on how to use SharePoint, how to create pages, how to understand navigation in SharePoint. So the knowledge aspects or the training aspects are often the part that we lead with instead of first defining the value behind it, why we're doing it. So once that knowledge is in place, we have kind of the longer term aspects of successful change through ability and reinforcement. So I think of ability as the knowledge that we have put into practice and getting better and better and better at something the more that we do it. So we're implementing those skills, those behaviors that we've learned, and really only time is going to be the factor here that makes that successful. And then reinforcement is continuing to sustain the change, but also I think coming back to the original awareness and desire to remind folks that this is why we're making this change in the first place, and reminding those what's in it for me messages as we go along. So this ADCAR model, I think, is very foundational to the practice of change management. What results then from implementing that model is really an impact to a lot of different aspects of someone's life and job and productivity. So if we're strictly speaking of workplace change, ProSci identifies these elements, these 10 elements that could be impacted by a change. So where somebody works, how much money they make, the processes and systems that they use, and so forth. But I think we could really boil down the impact of change to 3 overall pieces: mindset, skill set, and tool set. So our mindset needs to change to accommodate new processes, new ways of doing things, new ways of work. The skill set is going to change with knowledge and ability. And the tool set is certainly going to change for us as new technical tools are made available. So those 3 things working together in harmony, I think, represent the core of change impacts. Now, if we have an understanding of the ways in which we're going to impact the people within an organization, we've set some awareness and desire up front to let people know why we're making the change. We still need to implement that change over time and to do so in a way that's going to be most effective for those individuals that make up the organization. And so there are 5 levers or plans or pillars, depending on which verbiage we want to choose. But basically, there are pieces that we need to put into place to help us implement that change in a purposeful way. So these 5 plans: identifying sponsors and their responsibility, communication, making sure that the right message gets to the right people in a way that they're going to receive it well. Coaching along the way, I think that often focuses more on the people managers who also become change coaches. So they're receiving the change themselves, but they're helping other people adopt as well. Training, of course, making sure that the right training is presented at the right time, and that we're sustaining that over time, not just an initial push. And then just understanding how we're going to deal with resistance, whether that's trying to anticipate it, whether it's responding to it. Resistance is a natural response to change. So there are these plans that we put into place, which are going to help us to essentially implement that ADCAR approach. And I think this is where Viva comes into the picture, because as we attempt to make these best practices very real for people, we're going to employ different tools to do the job, to deliver that communication, to deliver that training, to assist with that coaching. And so that's really the proposition here for the rest of the session, is that Viva is really well suited and well designed to help us deliver that change and to deliver it effectively. So before I kind of switch gears here and we start talking about the Viva modules, just want to pause and ask if you have any questions or comments about what we've talked about so far. Okay. So no good presentation about Viva is complete unless you have a slide with all of the logos on it. So I want to make sure we accommodate that requirement. This is a quick overview of kind of the toolbox that we have in front of us. Now we're going to dig a little bit more deeply into several of these. So just to kind of provide an overview of what Viva really is, it's a suite of tools. It's a set of products and services. They are together under one umbrella of the employee experience. And really that automatically starts to speak to my mind to adoption and change management, because it's the way that people experience change in technologies and services and so forth that is absolutely critical to kind of tying employee experience and change management together. So Viva Connections is going to be there to help us with communication, getting our messaging out to the organization. Viva Engage is also going to provide ways that we can collaborate and communicate together and build communities. So perfect for things like champions programs. Viva Learning as a product is there as a self-service learning tool. So as part of our knowledge aspects, we're going to be able to put training into place when people want it and need it. Viva Insights is really designed for employee well-being, but it's also to help keep us on track. So I think the ability and reinforcement aspects are going to be served by Viva Insights. Viva Topics is all about knowledge management, putting information within the flow of work so people can get to what they need quickly. And Viva Goals is really a way to set some priorities, some objectives, and track those objectives over time. Now, those are the modules that are available today. There are some new modules that are coming, Viva Amplify and Pulse. We'll talk a little bit about those, but really Amplify is another way to help us build effective communication campaigns, and Pulse is going to be a way for managers to have even better interaction with their direct reports. And since adoption coaching is really centered on that interaction, I think it's going to be a great tool for that purpose. So the one other piece I want to mention here to set the stage for where we're going to go next with Viva is this change process identified by ProSci, which is really a three-phase process. But it begins in phase one with preparing our approach by defining what success looks like. So we start with the end in mind. So what are the impacts that we want to have? What's our approach to making those impacts a reality? But really beginning with objectives and the actions that we need to take to achieve that success. So in defining that change up front, really before we begin to implement those pillars and to put the change management practices into place, we need to define success, who's going to be impacted, what's going to be impacted, and what actions we need to take. That's Viva Goals. So this is a relatively new module to the world of Viva, but it's previously known as Ally, and Ally.io became a part of Microsoft, and over the last year or so has become part of this Viva platform, recently released. So there is already a lot of momentum there in this tool to help build effective OKRs. So we're talking about objectives and key results. And the Viva Goals product kind of extends that to also include projects. So if we're thinking about this as a change management tool, our objectives tend to be aspirational, but they also define what success looks like. So we can define those initial objectives of our change initiatives here in Viva Goals. Key results need to be measurable. But I think by saying here are the specific measurable impacts that we're going to have, directly relates to who and what will be impacted by the change. And then, of course, we're going to have very specific work to do to implement this. So projects need to be actionable. So we're defining those things that we need to do, the actions that we need to take to achieve that success. Now, over on the right-hand side of the screen, we have kind of an example of an OKR within the UI of Viva Goals. So the objective at the top, key results to support it, projects to help us to achieve those. And what I'd like to do is show you as many of these tools as possible and take maybe a scenario of either digital transformation or creating a hybrid workplace. It's a very common scenario that a lot of organizations have had to go through. And some of that is certainly still ongoing. So, what would we need to do to support an organization that's going to make those kinds of very broad changes? So Viva Goals has the concept of an organization, which doesn't mean that it's the whole company. It's really just what portion of the organization are we creating these OKRs to service. Could be org-wide, could be for a department, could be for a particular project. So I'm going to go to a different organization here, and we'll see a handful of goals that are already defined, or OKRs that are defined. And I think most of what we see in the documentation for this tool is really around more business objectives. So marketing campaigns, growing the pipeline, launching a product. But very easily, I think we can phrase this in terms that speak to effective change. So within an OKR, I start with my objective, which is aspirational. So we want to simplify and clarify our messaging in this case. That doesn't necessarily speak to how I'm going to do it, but it is something that we want to accomplish. So the way that we're going to start doing that is through our key results that are measurable. So in this case, it says 25 on-site user testing sessions. Okay, so we have a very specific number. So maybe one of our goals in this change management effort to begin to adopt more digital tools so we can have this hybrid workforce could be going from a pilot to an initial department to several departments and kind of rolling it out in a phased approach. So we could have these different key results to help us get there. I can track my progress on that key result. We can do regular check-ins, so these can become part of the cadence of meetings. This is also potentially going to become more integrated into other tools as well, so we can really keep track of these as we go. And then the projects, of course, are going to be the specific things that we need to do. So this is creating an action plan for the messaging improvements. So this is where those pillars, those 5 pillars from ProSci, could really plug in, so that we could say we want to make sure we create an effective communications plan. It's going to go to these audiences using these tools, and we're going to build a training plan to first maybe train IT and then certain departments. So Viva Goals is going to be a great way to set up our initial approach to change. What questions do you have that we can speak to briefly here about Viva Goals? Anything specific you'd like to ask? Pete?
I actually have a question. Is there any connectivity to other goal management platforms like Workday or anything along those lines?
There are some connections available today. They're pretty limited right now. I do know that that's on the path to add more third-party connectors. So I think the connections that we have right now are more related to kind of project management more than they are other goal tracking software. And that's, I think, the next step that we're going to see, integrating with things like Project or Planner. Yes, I see another hand up.
Hey, is there a way to like assign tasks and like, you show where you can create a project plan? Where does that project plan live? Is that in like Planner or?
So we can do this in a couple of different places. In the OKR presentation itself, so directly in Viva Goals, if this is a particular project, is the way that Goals would talk about it, this is almost more of a task, right? There may be some subtasks, so I can add those here. We can then use this to track our progress on those tasks. So there are some visualizations to help us track that progress. You can see those become visible here. So the activity that people have.
So
that
can
they're
you
reporting
assign
on.
those tasks out to folks?
Gotcha. So if I add a task here, I'm going to have the owner of the task that creates it. So that might be the first way I would do it, or I can assign a delegate. So that's I think speaking to what you're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Now I still may use additional tools to really track the progress of those tasks and just kind of report the results here, or I can use this as my tracking mechanism altogether. All right, so we have to kind of start with defining what our change is going to look like, what success means. And Viva Goals is going to help us to do that. Then I think as we begin to implement that change plan, we can kind of tie what's happening in the Viva world to what's happening in the ADCAR model. So if we use that model as our conceptual approach here, starting with awareness, we need to really let folks know what's happening, right? What's changing? Why is it changing? To establish the business value, but also to establish the need. What happens if we don't change? Identifying and communicating that risk, and then building a communication plan that we're then going to act upon to make sure those key messages get where they need to go. So there are some tools in the Viva suite that we've already mentioned that are perfectly designed for communication. And Viva Connections serves a dual purpose here, really. It's going to serve that purpose of getting our messaging out to the organization, either to the entire org or to be able to audience target specific messages to specific groups. The other purpose is going to be really a landing spot so that we can get to other resources that we need to access. So today, Viva Connections is an app that gets deployed to teams. And that app is really just a way to visualize the home page of the home site that's configured in SharePoint Online. We can click on the icon a second time to get the global navigation that's configured in SharePoint, so we can see ways to jump to other resources. And then Viva Connections provides to SharePoint a couple of web parts in the form of a dashboard and a feed. So if I go over to my demo environment here, I've deployed an app just called Viva, but this is basically Viva Connections because you can change the name and the icon so that it's branded for your purposes. And this is the current implementation. So if I were to go just out to SharePoint, to our main site here, our intranet site, we're seeing the same thing in Teams. And then if I click on that icon a second time, right, here are the navigation elements that I mentioned. So this is our configured global nav in SharePoint. So we're able to decide what goes here. Each person gets a my site or a set of sites that are unique to them, right? So in other words, these are sites that I've followed. And then the My News section, not loading in my demo tenant, but these are sort of AI-driven SharePoint news stories that presumably are going to be of interest to each person. So this is going to be unique to the individual. Now the dashboard and the feed that I mentioned, those components that are made available from Viva Connections being deployed, are here. So the dashboard is really just a way to present multiple either pieces of information, links to other data, but this is implemented through adaptive cards rather than using SharePoint web parts. And that adaptive card concept is kind of available in a lot of different places now. So Power Platform, Microsoft Teams, being able to format messages in chats and channels. Outlook uses adaptive cards, so it's an emerging standard, I think, that we're going to see more and more of. Now I can click on the card to get a quick view, and then there may be links to take me into other spots as well, but this is a way to show information that can be filtered by audience. So this could present either global organizational things or individual areas of interest. Now that story around Viva Connections is changing a little bit. The change is in a preview today. By March of next year, should be fully rolled out to all tenants so that the experience is going to become less of a duplication of your home site and more of a landing spot for Viva. So this is what the new experience is going to look like. I have some content here at the top, which is going to, again, be kind of AI driven to each person that logs in. So it's going to be unique for everyone. I'm going to have the links to the other Viva modules that we have deployed and that the user would have access to. So this is kind of the way that we're going to open up the other Viva products or modules. Today, it's a little bit disjointed because I have to add all of those apps individually in teams and kind of work with them one by one. But this new approach is going to give me a single place where I can sort of both land and then jump off to other locations. Any investment that we make today in the dashboard or the feed is going to be carried right over into the new experience. So those components that could live on an existing SharePoint page today are going to be front and center in this new experience by March. And the feed is really going to be a combination of news items that are either applicable to the person who's viewing it, or that have been marked as boosted by, let's say, maybe a communications department or HR or part of our change management process. So there can be messages at the top of that feed that are the same for everybody. So those really key messages are going to show up there. Just to show you what that looks like in reality, here is the Viva Connections page as I connect to it with my Microsoft credentials, so you can see links to other things. There's the dashboard that's unique to me. Resources at the bottom shows the global navigation defined in SharePoint, but then here are frequent sites that I visit or sites that I've followed. In the upper right-hand corner, the old experience is not too far away because all I really have to do is click on this link to go to our intranet site. So I still can double click or make a second click on the Viva Connections icon to show that here as well. Now, let me jump back into Viva Connections just to kind of refresh. See if I can do so. So that new experience, hopefully it will reload for me here. Oh, I broke my demo. But that new experience is going to be available and pretty consistent now then for all tenants, right? So something that's going to look like this. Now, let me pause for questions, and then I want to talk about really what's at the center of this experience. So Jill, I see your hand up.
So can we change this dashboard to look more like what our SharePoint team pages are, so it's more consistent for the look and feel, so our users aren't confused as they go from site to site?
So the current experience today, because it is just showing the SharePoint site, can fully implement your branding. This new experience, when it gets rolled out, we're going to be able to make very minimal changes to, so that branding is not going to be available, at least initially. Now, there is some PowerShell that's available today, so that if you do want to still keep the old experience around, you want to show that SharePoint page, you can actually still do that by running that PowerShell. But this is going to really be sort of as is without additional branding opportunities at first.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? So I think what really is going to drive the communication aspect here for sure, to help us get the word out to the people in the organization, is really SharePoint news. That's still going to be front and center in the feed. It's going to be potentially front and center on the current experience if we have news web parts. And then news is potentially going to show up in some of these top panels as well, in addition to courses that you're taking in Viva Learning and so forth. So that capability that exists really in SharePoint, I think, enriches the Viva experience and is worth talking about separately here. So SharePoint news if you're not familiar with it, is really just a way to create a page in SharePoint through either the news web part or on the drop down of creation for a new page from the home page. News post is one of the options there. So it's really like any other SharePoint page, but it's designed to plug into all of those areas that are consuming news. So the SharePoint pages and Viva connections, of course, are going to be capable of displaying news. The mobile app for SharePoint displays news. The app bar, the global navigation in Viva Connections display news. The homepage for SharePoint that Microsoft provides, even if you don't have your own custom one. So if you click on SharePoint, this experience can also include news articles. So they're designed to show up in a lot of places, is the point. And so it's great visibility if we're creating that content. So I could create a news post here, and we can build some templates to make this simpler, so that if there are consistent communications going out as a result of the change, we could maybe build out that the layout as well as the branding for that so they all look consistent. But if I create this news post, whatever our text is here, and just popping in a quick image just to build out this page a little bit, is going to start showing up as soon as we publish it in all of those locations where news is being retrieved. So just to put something together here, it doesn't look great, but it's a page we can post or publish. Now, if I go back to the home page, a little bit further down on the page, I have a news web part. It is configured currently to look for news from every site. I could limit that to specific sites. I could limit it to sites in a hub if we have SharePoint hubs configured. But you'll notice that that showed up right away. So if I go back and just view the page as a normal user would encounter it, right, there's our information. Now, if we wanted to build a web part to just show news about our change initiatives so that it's not there with all of the other news that's being published in the organization, we do have the option to work with page details, which can use SharePoint metadata. So not only are properties built in, but we can add our own so that we could specifically mark a news page as being related to the change effort. Then when we retrieve that information in our web part, we can filter by just that one piece of metadata. So this is a great way to almost create like a blog or something to accumulate those stories over time, but have them be very focused on just that change initiative. Right, so SharePoint News is really a key, I think, to making Viva Connections really shine, because that's how we're going to get our messages out. Viva Connections really just becomes the mechanism for displaying and consuming them. We also, in the past, have had other tools that have helped us to do that work, because with SharePoint News, it goes to a lot of places, but it may not go everywhere we want it to go. So often we had some duplication potentially between what we're doing in SharePoint and what we're doing in, say, a Teams channel. And there was a Teams app template. It's still available, that we can download for free, called Company Communicator, which was designed to be able to deliver messages as chats within channels, but to deliver them to multiple channels at one time. so that we're kind of doing this blast to a lot of different places, a lot of different teams. Now, the UI is pretty limited in my opinion here. So oftentimes when this gets implemented, it gets immediately customized so that it's a little bit more capable. And I think that is really going to be made a bit obsolete when the new Viva Amplify tool becomes available, because its job is really to communicate to employees where they are. It's going to include some assistance for putting good communications together, but it is going to give us the ability to create a campaign, publish it to multiple channels. Now that could mean Teams channels, SharePoint, Outlook, and to be able to manage that campaign, start date, end date, view the metrics on how people are interacting. And it's going to leverage really the same kinds of capabilities in terms of creating content that we have in the SharePoint news world. So I think this is going to become a really important tool for communications planning and delivering our messaging as part of change initiatives. Any questions that I can answer here about SharePoint News, Viva Connections, Viva Amplify before we move on? Lindsay.
I'm thinking about audience targeting. I know you said on your previous slide that you could audience target. So if I was wanting to do a communication or different communications according to the change I was doing to different areas, would that be by the 365 grouping? Is that how you would do it?
Yeah, most likely, yes. So when we create the news article here, I believe I can see it through page details. So I can define that audience targeting on the page itself, or I can define it on the news web part. But when I do that, it's really going to be either individuals or M365 groups. I can also choose to promote a SharePoint news article and really just take the link to it and use it in some other type of communication, like an email, which would be naturally targeted to a specific Yammer community. So theoretically, the news would be open to everybody, but I can use a different mechanism for targeting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we've started with awareness because we need to get the message out there. What's changing? Why is it changing? Once that awareness is in place, we begin to build desire, focusing on the why. What is the value? Do we have successes that we can share? I think sharing those successes over time is also going to help with ability and reinforcement. Building a champions program, having others sort of talking about the value of the change and the tools and skills and mindset involved in those changes is invaluable. And there's a real focus here on what's in it for me. So we still have some messaging to get out, but really what we're looking to build is a sense of community to kind of build a culture around the change. And I think one of the best ways to do that is through what has traditionally been communities in Yammer. There was a communities app that made those available in Microsoft Teams. So Viva Engage is kind of the next version of that communities app. So we could think of it as sort of Yammer communities in Teams, in that Teams experience. It's a bit more integrated than the communities app was. So it's going to give us a place to come together through either official communities where we're making announcements or more social communities where we're really driving the real-time chats and collaborations with folks. But this is going to be a great way to have sponsors be able to be very visible because they're creating messages in this community. To have champions be able to share success. There is a storylines feature that just rolled out, so that storyline can be used on a personal level to kind of talk maybe every week. We've got a storyline update we're going to provide to talk about the ways that our change has been impactful during that week. And this really just gives us a place to ask questions, to share knowledge, and to do it in a structured way. So Viva Engage, if we take a quick look at it here within the context of Teams, is going to be an app. It's going to essentially open up the Yammer community's experience here. I can still go to Yammer in the browser if I want to. But maybe this champions community, you can see that this community is the pride and joy of Contoso. So it's effectively labeled as such. But it's here that I can pin announcements as kind of an owner of the community or an admin. People can come in and ask questions. That is a question or a discussion type in Yammer, which is important because if I create a question, I assume that that question is going to have a correct answer. And the other members of the community can upvote those answers so that everyone else gets the benefit of that answered question. So we're sharing knowledge in that way. I can create new discussions. So I love working from home. We can let everybody talk about how much they love working from home, or those that don't. Nobody ever expresses a contrary opinion in a social community on the internet, so I'm sure they wouldn't do so here, but they could if they wanted to. So the conversations build over time, giving us also the ability to share things like files, to coordinate together through Planner if we have specific tasks that we want the community to accomplish. And now the beauty of the integration here with Viva Engage is that if somebody does post a reply, let's say to my question, rather than having to just go and check in on Yammer from time to time, I can see in the activity feed, not a whole lot to show here in the demo tenant, but the Teams messages that I'm missing are going to show up here, and community messages are going to show up here. So they're all going to go into one spot. It becomes a more unified experience. Okay. So this really is, I think, an excellent way to build the desire, because we're sharing the experience together. We're able to ask questions, provide opinions, support one another through the change, or announce more official things to help people kind of understand where we are in the process. Questions about Viva Engage that I could answer before we move forward? I'm a big Star Trek nerd, so this is my favorite Viva module because I can pretend I'm Captain Picard with my bald head and say Viva Engage. Take that for what it's worth. Now, there are some other features coming to Viva Engage that aren't technically new Viva modules, but they are new experiences. We've had the ability for a long time to create a community in Yammer where leadership can communicate with the organization. That's being made just a little bit more formal, I think, here with the leadership corner, really creating an opportunity for a two-way dialogue with organizational leadership. And since visible sponsors are so important so that people know that the change is being seen as valuable from the very top all the way down, I think this is going to be a great way to make that sponsorship even more highlighted than it may have otherwise been. So not only in our champions community can sponsors add content that's valuable, but also here in the leadership corner. There is a new module that is coming as well that I didn't mention specifically because I think it could potentially be included in other modules, but right now it's In the early documentation is being shown separately. That is called people in Viva, because one of the things we want to do in communities is really connect to subject matter experts, folks who know the right answers and can provide those quickly. There is an organization tab that's already available in multiple places in Teams, but every time I look at a person, I can see kind of where they are in the organization. So this is an extension of that idea, but it's going to begin to connect other Viva components together so that when I look at a person's card, I'm going to be able to see things like the goals that they own and click on those goals and be able to jump into that user experience in Viva Goals very quickly. I'm going to be able to have Viva topics, which we'll talk about here in just a moment, show up here as areas that that person is attached to, something that they know about. So I think this is going to be a really great way to extend that sense of community and extend that champions or sponsor visibility, because we can very quickly see how people are relating to the initiatives within the organization. All right, so let's take a quick shift then into knowledge. So awareness to desire to knowledge in the ADCAR model. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory because really we're delivering training and information to people to help them to understand what the changes are, how to use new tools, enable that support for those new tools and processes. So Viva Learning is a natural fit. It's a self-service learning module. It is a Teams app. The integrations from Viva Learning are going to increase in the days ahead into the daily briefing email that goes out from Insights. It's going to show up in the Viva Connections homepage as a reminder for the learning that we have coming up. But really, this is a place where we could potentially drive all knowledge management within the organization, or specifically target this to help people understand our change initiatives. So let me jump over to our tenant one more time. I'm going to click on Viva Learning on the left. There are a couple things that I want to show you here. One is the ability for an admin to create what's called a feature set. Now, theoretically, this tool could bring in content from a lot of sources. It's automatically going to bring in things like Microsoft Learn, basic LinkedIn learning, and learning that you have in SharePoint sites in your organization. That's going to be there without any additional licensing. You can also, with a premium license, get content from third-party sources like Pluralsight or Coursera. So there are some configured providers here that are included in this instance of Viva Learning. So all of the courses that I have access to within these sources are going to show up in my Viva Learning environment. That means there could be a lot. So if we know we've got this org-wide initiative for digital transformation, hybrid workplace, we want to highlight some things there, we can create a featured set and include in a timed way, so starting on this date, ending on this date, up to 5 courses, or they could be individual courses, they could be learning paths, right? 5 entries that we're going to highlight for everyone when they come into Viva Learning. So the very first thing I see is my information on the left, but here's the featured set on the right. So Outlook, SharePoint, OneDrive, some general tips on digital transformation. These are things that are going to be important for everybody as we go through this change. So they don't have to go searching for them. They're readily available. Now I can also make sure maybe as either a change manager or a people manager, I might want to assign training. And it could be different training based on the role of the resource. but we can actually come here and manage our recommendations. So if I see a course, and I'm just going to grab the first one that I'm coming across here, I can highlight this for me. I can set a bookmark so that I can get to it more quickly later. I can also share the content either by copying the link to it or putting it into a Teams chat. But if I recommend it to somebody, let's say we're going to recommend this to Deborah, I can set a due date. So if I'm Deborah's manager, for example, I can say you need to complete this training in the next 2 weeks. Make the recommendation, which now shows up in Deborah's Viva Learning environment, plus she gets a notification by email. And I can kind of keep track here of how people are doing. So there's some basic metrics to show me that I've made a recommendation to Deborah. What's her status? Has she started? Has she finished? Is it in progress? And if I have a training here that's being made available to multiple people, I can track each individual. Yes, I saw a hand go up. Sorry, I didn't catch you.
That's okay. Are you able to recommend to groups or is it just individuals?
Yeah, at this point, the recommendation, I believe, is just to individuals.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. All right, so we use this internally at Microsoft. Fantastic tool. Takes a lot of disparate sources where maybe we had to go out to different websites before, all consolidated into a single place now. And you can add specific interests here. You can search across all of those learning providers. And if I search for something like Viva, for example, I can then filter that by provider so that if I wanted to see things that Microsoft is saying about Viva or plural site courses, right, we have that capability. It's a really great tool. Lots of value in getting our training into the hands of the people that need it when they need it. Other questions around Viva Learning? And so the other tool that I think really works well to advance knowledge of the change and of the tools, processes, services that come along with it is Viva Topics. So how much time do we waste on trying to find the right information, doing searches, opening up documents to see if that information that we're searching for is actually there or not being able to find what we need, maybe recreating it from scratch. It's something like a day a month that we waste just searching for information. So what Viva Topics is designed to help us do is to utilize the SharePoint search capabilities along with some specific artificial intelligence, some AI behind the scenes, and the Microsoft Graph, to bring those together to basically crawl content in advance and tag that content with key topics that are presented there. And then those topics, once they are identified by the AI, can be curated with a human touch to validate the information that's there and connect us to the right people and the right documents so that I can go to a topic page and see this this sort of search results page already put together for me. If I had to go to the topics center, which puts all of those topics together into a single spot every time I needed something, it wouldn't be a whole lot better than search. So topic cards actually get plugged into a lot of different tools, not only Viva Topics, but SharePoint pages, Microsoft search results, if you utilize that, Outlook on the web, Yammer conversations, Teams messages. So these topic cards are going to show up as hyperlinks that get automatically generated so that in the flow of the work that I'm already doing, I can click on a topic and immediately go to that topic page. So let me show you a couple of quick examples of what I mean. So back on my Viva Connections module. This is my home page. There is a kind of a banner announcement here that our change is coming. We can put together a SharePoint page to show some resources here. But I've added some text onto this page. Here you see a hashtag in front of the text. That means I have explicitly manually added a link to the topic in Viva Topics. Here, there's something that looks like a hyperlink. It's not one that I created. This is something that Viva Topics automatically added for me because it saw that I was using a named defined topic, and it creates an automatic hyperlink. So if I hover over that and click it, it shows me the topic card, which gives me the description, the people that are pinned to that topic, the resources, other related topics, and it allows everybody in the organization to kind of vote to say, is this link correct? Is the highlight correct? Are the people that are tagged here, are they the right people? So that curation is ongoing, not only by knowledge managers, but potentially by everyone. And then if I click on the title of the topic, that takes me into the page in the topic center to show me those search results. So in this case, for this topic, someone has gone in and modified the page. So they've basically said, yes, this suggested topic is valid. They've pinned 3 people because of their role in this particular topic. So we know that they are folks that we can turn to for questions around this digital initiative. There are suggested people that the AI found, which haven't been validated yet, but do show up because of their prominence in the content. Maybe they're creating a lot of content or modifying things. And then here's a link to documents in SharePoint. So this one is pinned. That means somebody has explicitly said, yes, this is pertinent. But then these are all of the things that the search crawler has already found that mention this topic a number of times, and we can see how many. The topics are created across a lot of different sites, so we've got links to those sites. And the digital initiative is tied to a lot of other topics, so we get this map, kind of a mind map, which actually gives me then links that I can navigate to all of those other related topics and continue my my exploration there. So this is one I think that probably excites me the most because I've spent so much time with customers over the years trying to work with SharePoint metadata on files that are coming from an old file system and are only structured by kind of a hierarchy, to make that information more readily searchable, findable, sortable, and this does a great job at that. And as a knowledge manager, I can see all of the topics that have been created, including suggested ones. I can go down through the list and say, based on the score and the number of impressions, how many people are interacting with it, that it's probably something that I should confirm to let people know that, yes, everything that's here looks good. And if I made changes to it, if I pinned people or files, it's marked as published so that we know at a glance, this is something that somebody has taken some time to curate. So I think this is a really great tool. It's available in the Viva Suite license or as an extension just for Viva Topics, but really a big time saver. Lindsay.
With your suggested files, etc., do the permissions on the files, do they stay in place? So, for example, if it suggested a file, but that file was actually restricted, would that restriction still be in place for people other than obviously had the permission to be able to view it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is yes. The security trimming that applies to our normal searches in SharePoint applies here. So could be a very different list of documents that one person sees versus another.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so between Viva Learning, which is a place we go to consume specific training resources, Viva Topics, which helps us get connected to subject matter experts and content much more quickly than we might be able to otherwise. I think these are great tools to help drive the knowledge aspects of ADCAR. So coming soon, we're going to have one additional experience here. This actually is part of Viva Engage, because the topics in Yammer, which have existed for a long time, if you have Viva topics, they become integrated together. And we have this question type, discussion type. So people are asking questions already in Viva Engage. Answers are being provided. Topics can be tagged so we can link people to knowledge. Well, this new Answers in Viva experience is really going to present that in a way that's more searchable. It takes kind of all of the questions that may be asked across multiple communities and puts them into a single spot, so that we can very quickly begin to see who is an expert in an area, who could we ask a question of, what are some questions that are being asked, and what are some of the more popular answers, and then search through all of those as one experience. So I think this is going to also be a very useful tool in the future. Okay, so the last section I want to move through here pretty quickly, and I'm grouping together ability and reinforcement. Now, what happens in the real world is just the opposite here. This is the part that takes the longest, because it takes time to develop that ability, and we need to reinforce over time so that we're coming back to the value. But that deep habitual usage, which really defines adoption, just takes time. So as part of that, I think Viva Insights is a natural fit as far as the tooling is concerned, because we do get those daily emails. We do have Viva Insights for personal insights that everybody can go to and view, focusing either on the well-being aspects or how they're interacting with their teammates. The one piece here that we're seeing in the graphic is that the email for Viva Insights is going to start including more and more integrations with other tools. So in addition to being able to take action in those emails, maybe clicking to book time for focus time and what have you, there are going to be a topics list that will show up. So any topics that are mentioned, Viva topics that is, in the email, are going to be tagged here automatically, so that connection is going to be even tighter. Plus, Viva Learning courses that have either been recommended or that we're taking will show up here as well. The manager insights, leader insights, those continue to evolve, but really the idea here is that we can allow managers to see some of the productivity and work patterns. So, if part of our digital initiative here is to get people to maybe send fewer emails, have more Teams conversations, tighter collaboration, we can use those manager insights to track that. On a team basis, leader insights to track that productivity in an anonymized way across the organization. So the new module that's coming to supplement this, I think, is Viva Pulse, which is all about the communication, purposeful communication between managers and their reports. So this would allow managers to send out a request to kind of take the pulse of their team and get feedback. The questions that are here are going to be researched back, so it's not just kind of an open type your question in, but it is going to also provide a way for the reports to initiate that feedback process to their managers, and for managers to track all of this over time. So I think that's going to be a great addition to what's happening with those manager insights, because it's not just reporting, it's interaction. Okay, so the Viva suite as an employee experience suite is positioned incredibly well to support us as change managers. We can define the vision and success, the outcomes, the key results, Viva Goals. We can build awareness through our communication modules in Viva, which is connections and amplify. The desire can be built by establishing that culture and community that's engaged and people in Viva, so that we can not only sort of talk about the value together, but share successes and connect to the right people with the right information. To share knowledge and make that information as readily available as possible. Viva Learning as a self-service tool, topics as a way to connect to the data that maybe is already there to help us better understand the change, and then answers in Viva, which is going to be an extension of Engage. And then ability and reinforcement using insights and Pulse, so that we continue to kind of track that and come back to that over time. But honestly, all of the other tools also play a factor in ability and reinforcement. So all of these working together, I think, create a great toolbox for the change manager. So we do have a little bit of time left over. I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time for questions. I really appreciate you asking those questions along the way. But I just want to pause here and ask if there are any other questions or comments to consider before we close. Well, just in case you have a question that you're saving for later or shaving for later, here's my contact info one more time. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. The other link is to my blog. So more than happy to kind of hear if this has been a beneficial session for you, if you find some value in Viva as a tool set moving forward in the work that you're doing. And I beg your indulgence also to give you a shameless plug for my book, which is focused on SharePoint, but does include content around Viva and adoption and change management as part of kind of the overall picture of SharePoint architecture. So, you know, Christmas is coming, so you may need a gift idea. Certainly don't overlook this one. All right. Thank you all so much. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks for spending part of it here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Patrick. That was great. I am going to pull up our survey link once again that everyone can view and start to fill out. This is something that you'll want to include or do throughout the day with all of the sessions that you're attending. I'll also paste a link to that survey in our meeting chat. So go ahead and click on that now. And with that, we do have a $25 gift card that we're looking to give out in this session. So I'm just going to randomize our meeting attendees quick while you're opening up that survey, and I'll get some contact information from who it draws. Alrighty. And it looks like it is Matt Schulte. Matt's still here. Perfect. Seeing Matt. Alrighty, I'll reach out to Matt and get that gift card passed along. Thank you, everyone. We have about 10 minutes before our next session starts. We'll be right back here with Thomas Duff.
Everybody, take care.